This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today I have a very special guest who's really dived into a very helpful level of work when it comes to helping women heal from traumatic experiences. And she shared her own experiences in her new book, My Inner Heroine. Kerry Blaser, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you have a compelling story because, you really have picked yourself up from pretty tough experiences in life. And now you're sharing it with the world while helping people heal. And you've had good people along the way help you get you out of those situations. So please tell us about your background.
So I was born in Arizona, California. I was born in Arizona. It doesn't work. Okay. I was born in Arizona in 1970. And then when I was 9 months old, my dad was an engineer. We moved to Europe for a few years for him to work on missiles for the Vietnam War in France and Switzerland. And
Wow.
And then we moved to Southern California, about 15 minutes from what is now the Bachelor Mansion. Just so you have an idea of the level of affluence I was raised around.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah. So when I went to kindergarten, I was at kindergarten, elementary school with my parents were still married, but at the end of my kindergarten year, when I was almost 6, they got a divorce. And then soon after that, my mom moved into an apartment building, and then my parents argued constantly. My mom was an alcoholic, my dad a workaholic who probably had other women. I'm not sure.
Right.
And just based on other life experiences and the men that I attracted into my life. And when I was 12, I got a job. When I was 14, I started working at Hot Dog on a Stick.
I saw that.
And I met my original hero in the book there in Southern California. So, but I didn't realize that all the men in my book were leading me back to him. So I never went on a date with any of the guys, including my guy from my childhood. And I went on to get an undergraduate and graduate degree in Chinese and religious studies. I met my ex-husband in Tibet in 93.
That's really cool, by the way. Yeah, I read that. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, he's Israeli.
Yeah.
Even more crazy, right? And so that's how I went to Israel, was because I met him in Tibet, and we had our first kiss at in a Buddhist monastery at the Mount Everest base camp at 17,500 feet. And actually, that's where I have my favorite travel story. Would you like me to share?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Okay. So, and I love balance. So there's reverence and there's irreverence. And we need both to understand, we need both. Like, you don't know what tall is till you know what short is, right?
Exactly,
we need the opposite as the mirror. And, we're all humans. Okay. So I'm just kind of setting the tone.
Yeah.
And we were 23. We were all young. Okay. So in Tibet at that time, you had to rent a Land Cruiser to get outside of Lhasa, the capital city. If you wanted to go to like the Mount Everest base camp and smaller cities or lakes, you had to rent a Land Cruiser. So I rented a Land Cruiser with 4 Israelis, a German guy, and me. And the German guy, Mark, had lived in America, and Israelis all speak English. Usually they speak English really well. So no problem. And I was the only one that spoke Chinese, and the driver's Tibetan. So he spoke Tibetan and Chinese. So I was the only one that could technically talk to the driver. So we're driving around, and they all love me because I could order them whatever food they wanted. I carry my stomach is bad, just boiled potatoes. And I'd order up the boiled potatoes, and they love me. So they had a woman taking care of them who spoke the right language.
That's unbelievable. What are the odds?
It was fun. I mean, it was, and then they protected me. It was classic feminine, masculine, if you want to think about it, And so we get the Land Cruiser pulls up there's a Buddhist monastery, right, on the Mount Everest base camp at 17,500 feet. And the monk comes out and he says, "We have wood." And we thought, "You have wood way above the tree line? Like, did you go down, chop the wood, and then you have enough lung capacity to bring it back up?" Because I climbed 1 or 2 stairs. And I'm like, I couldn't breathe. Right? So then Mark and I, the German guy and I, let's go see the wood. Okay. And we knew that in Tibet, they use yak dung as fuel. They'll take the yak poop, the yak dung, put it on the side of the wall. And when it dries, it falls off the wall. Okay. I know you're seeing where this is going. We're young and irreverent, right? So we go back there, and the monk is telling us, and he's pointing, he says, "Wood." And we look at it, we're like, "That's yak dung." So Mark says, "Shit." And the monk shakes his head and says, "Wood." And I'm like, shaking my head, "No shit." And I'm cracking up, like I'm losing it, right? Because here we are arguing with. So you can
my
imagine the
God.
next group of travelers, this is 93 prior to YouTube, right? That comes up and the monk comes out and they're having this
A monk.
spiritual experience. It's like, it freaking happened. And the night we were there, because only there one night, like the guy that was one of the Israeli guys went out to go to the bathroom and a Tibetan guy was squatting like they do in Asia. And he started peeing. He started peeing on him because he couldn't see. It was so dark. Like, so
Ooh.
bathroom issues. And there's the book, we all poop, right? So there you go.
I don't think, in all my trails of life and all the times that I've been on this podcast, I've never heard anything like that. And I probably won't again. And that is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my entire life,
And
man. That
I'm
is,
so glad you love it because I love
oh,
humor and like men
oh,
especially need humor. Like
no
you
question.
can't come at a man with all kinds of wisdom and talk to him all day long. You got to make your
No,
point and let him go about his business.
no
And that's
question.
where humor comes in. And then
My gosh.
also the humor, it activates our solar plexus chakra, our
Yeah.
solar plexus, and that's the entry point to our shadow where our codependencies, our emotional pain, our subconscious resides. So if you
Yeah.
help a man kind of unearth that with humor,
Mhm.
then, you're in business.
Well, I think that I saw one of your podcast episodes, and I'm probably going to butcher the method that you
That's
thought
fine.
about, where you gave the analogy of like what has more energy, like the ball that was
The
going
two
off.
balls. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I thought that was very
Yeah.
fascinating, right? Because at the end of the day, the peaks and valleys are the ones
Hmm.
that are getting the more energy behind it, right? And so, and I love your quote too, where you say, "Pain is viewed as beautiful; it reveals what needs to be healed," right? So
Yeah.
your journey around the world obviously was very personal, and you met great people along the way. You got married, whether you
Mm.
got divorced or not, it still was part of the course of life.
Yeah.
So how did you how did it come to that, and then how did you navigate pain at one point to get out on the other side to want to help people and women specifically?
Okay, so that's my soul's purpose, right?
Right.
So the initiation process that I had to go through to receive that wisdom, the pain is beautiful quote, was 35 years of debilitating lower back pain. So
Oh,
we store our pain where we store our value. So you'll often see women have pain in their hips, and you see
right.
women like I see all these Instagram commercials about somatic hip exercises. Like you do the exercises long enough and you'll cry. If you can't cry, stretch your hips. That's because women's values in our hips are a reproductive value. Men's
Right.
values typically in their shoulders and their arms to provide and protect. So
Right.
at 15, that was the end of when I saw my original hero in high school because he's 2 years older.
Yeah.
I was fighting with my dad a lot, but I know that pain came from me internalizing negativity from men because it's
Right.
happened, in my healing journey. So
Right.
that's when it started, but I didn't know it was him because I repressed him. But
Yeah.
then 35 years later, during my first conversation with the first of my heroes, who I call my first hero, that lower back pain, because I engaged my voice and I wouldn't even let Jared in high school, I wouldn't even let him talk to me. Like just fear would come over me, just go, no, go
Right.
away. No, like he was a school of 2,000 kids. He's ASB president, exceedingly good looking, varsity letter. Okay. He has the most popular senior says, I'll introduce you. I'll get her to talk to you. Oh, really? Because
Yeah.
I don't know a
Right.
damn thing on my own. I just need to be gaslight. This guy's nice, even though I knew he freaking wasn't. So
Yeah. Right.
the most popular senior comes up to me, and this is in the book too. He
Yeah.
tries to introduce us. And I'm like, are you He's like, oh yeah, let me introduce you to him. He's really nice. I'm like, are you punking me? Where's the cameras? Like, I'm like, and I'm 14, right? And I'm just, no, right? But I believe he's my guy, like he's my masculine. So around the masculine, that strength comes out in the woman, and then
Mm.
the femininity, opens the man. Well, I don't know, a week or so later, he lets another girl bring him a picnic for lunch at high school, and I'm
Oh,
like,
buddy. Oh, buddy.
that's claiming a man.
Mm.
You're so into me that you
Right.
need the most popular senior and your ASB president to introduce yourself. And I'm so unimportant
Right.
that you can replace me a week later? Hmm.
Right.
Well, that
Right. Right.
happened because of my wounds too. Those are his wounds, and that's like emotional, right? You're here one place, you're there one place, you're there. That's the feminine, all right?
Right.
If he were healthy in his masculinity, then he would be the
Mm.
rock, the stoic one. But I was like
Right.
in my masculinity, in my no, no, no,
Right.
no, no. And because he's in his feminine, he could have easily lashed out physically. Like it would have been dangerous for us to come together. But so what did I do after the whole picnic incident? Job.
Right.
So I got a job.
Right.
You know, and while now I could put those pieces together, this was my soul's plan to like, which I'll get to the 2-ball experiment. But so we're all souls having a human experience. And we know this now because physicists have proven that we all have energy bodies, or souls.
Right.
And so our energy bodies abide by the laws of physics because that's how, energy operates, as laws of physics. So this is where the 2-ball experiment, the highs and lows of life, learning to surf the waves of life. And here's a physics experiment proving that. Okay. So you have 2 balls, identical balls, 2 tracks, one slightly downhill and one has hills and valleys. And which ball reaches the finish line first?
One with the peaks and valleys.
Right. Why? Because of the momentum, inertia, and propulsion gained from going down and going back up. Now we can use Mount Everest as like the physical, right? If you're going to get to the top, if you want the fantastical experience of being at the top of Mount Everest in the clouds, seeing the whole world from that, extremely rare vantage point, how much work do you have to do to get there? How much self-belief do you have to unearth, and self-confidence and, lung capacity, all of it, right?
Well, the other part is how many dead bodies are up there at the same time too, right?
There you go, right? Like, you want to get that high, you taking risk. So if we equate enlightenment with the top of Mount Everest, and enlightenment's an emotion. How do we know this? Well, now we know, our energy bodies, they can measure the hertz that we're vibrating at. So shame is like 20 hertz, anger is like 80 hertz, love is about 200 hertz, compassion is about 400 hertz, where enlightenment is 700 hertz and above. Now, if you're going to go from 20 hertz to like 1,000 hertz, your body's going to die. You can't just go
too much of an extreme.
It's too much of an extreme. So you have to, like, there's learning to surf the waves of life. And you don't start, at the 70-foot wave in Portugal. You start on the 1-foot wave, right? You kind of go in a little, and like, you don't start climbing mountains by ascending Mount Everest. You start by, like 2 years old, climbing a little hill and falling down and rolling down and figuring it out.
Exactly.
But this is when you have a healthy parent who has a secure attachment to self, a secure attachment to their soul, then they can model and guide the children through learning to surf the waves of life. But if the parents have never learned to surf and they just keep trying to stay on top of the waves because they, but really they're in the valley of darkness, they don't know how to get out, then they model out to their kids, and then there's how mental illness is passed down.
Then they can't even help you.
They can't help me. But all of that is necessary, that valley of darkness. Because if you want to get to top of Mount Everest, right, or enlightenment, how deep of a valley of darkness do you have to be able to go into to get to get that high?
Right.
So that's where the pain is necessary to experience the enlightenment.
It's funny because, so I have a black belt in karate, right? I've taken various different martial arts too. And the analogy that you said of not climbing the mountain, I mean, people see people with a black belt or in any style or art. It's like, that may take somebody 10 years, right? And so people have a tendency to only see the final result of something and say, well, congratulations to you. Like, that was a long, lonely road. Or you may be frustrated. You can get down on yourself. You see people get promoted and you didn't at the same time, but it wasn't your time. And so that's when ultimately the real you starts to come out, is when you actually don't get what you want, or you could suffer an injury. You could have to take time off because life happens. And to your point, you better be able to navigate the highs and lows. Because when you get that black belt, or when you climb that Everest, all of that bad feeling went away. Like everything that happened before that, you're just like, it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I know it sounds like a bad thing, but when I got mine, I felt like kind of like Thanos at the end of the Avengers. Like, I slayed the world, right? Like, I just was like, everything else didn't matter, right? So then it's just gravy on top. So
can I follow before you next question? Can I mention something? The comparison thing. That, oh my gosh, it's so important to remember that we're all on our own trajectory. So, and look at me. I've helped men like Andrew Tate, Fire Academy instructors. To get back to my guy from high school who's former FBI assistant special, the men have money. I've never been paid, and I've experienced enlightenment several times. And I'm a Reiki master. How many Reiki masters are out there getting paid left, right, and center? I've never experienced enlightenment. And here I am, Reiki master, Karuna Reiki master, enlightenment more than 10 times, help, and I haven't been like paid yet.
That's crazy.
I could spend all my time being pissed off on that, or I could say, look, my soul has a plan because
Mhm.
I need to be Carrie ready.
Mhm.
Carrie ready is different than other people ready. Carrie
Right.
ready means I need enlightenment, I need Reiki master, I need a
Right.
book, I need this, I need that. And then I'm ready to do the work at Carrie level work.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So this is
Absolutely.
where it doesn't behoove us to say well, I was in therapy for 6 months and you've been there for 6 months, but you haven't made any progress. Well, but stop.
It's
It's
about the
not.
relative. No, and you can't do the mirror comparison, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody's body and everybody's makeup is different.
Yes.
When you Let's talk about your book real quick.
Yeah.
The My Inner Heroine. How did that book come into fruition?
So I wrote the first edition last year and I thought the story was over. I thought that was the book before I reached out to my guy from my childhood. But his soul came through during my first enlightenment experience last year in March.
Mhm.
So the book came out of me and I always kind of felt like a book. I'm like, if I'm attracting Justin Waller into my life and his best friend is Andrew Tate and Justin and I were DMing on Instagram, and then I helped 2 fire academy instructors. And there's a whole mental health crisis in the first responder community. It's like, okay, I need to write about this. It just started coming out of me. So with the second firefighter, he's a retired fire captain. And so based on our challenges, I
Mhm.
wrote some feedback to the dean of public safety because that's his
Mhm.
boss's boss at the local community college, the fire academy. And I said, potential dereliction of duty feedback for 2 fire academy instructors and your cadet program. And so with the email coming out of me, then the book came out of me last summer. And
Mhm.
then a week after I published the first edition, I reached out to I called Jared in the book. And then a
Mhm.
whole other series of enlightenment experience came through in November and December. And then
Mhm.
I rewrote the book and added a chapter on him. And then the book totally came together and I published in April.
Yeah,
So
and so
that's kind of how it came out of me.
how's the book been received so far? Because have you heard? I know
Great.
that that's fantastic, and I saw that obviously it's helping women with confidence and their inner
Mm,
self. And there's a lot of neglected things which come from emotional trauma. Because anytime you see somebody who's physically hurt, we immediately rush to assistance. You bruised your
yeah.
hand, you hurt your leg, you hit your head.
Yeah.
The first thing we do, but then we're less sensitive when it comes to people's emotional and mental needs because it's something we really can't
Right.
see. Or you'll tell people, for lack of a better term, get over
Mm,
it. Right? Hey,
yeah.
pick yourself
Right.
up. Walk outside and get some sunshine. So where did you find out that it's more to it than just that?
Well, I didn't understand that my lower back pain was emotional pain
Mhm.
until about 2 years before I healed it. And that's when I received that wisdom. The pain is beautiful wisdom. On my 45th birthday, I just turned 55. So 10 years ago, my mom passed away on my 45th birthday. And that's the day
Awful.
my intuition, but it's not
Awful.
awful. Let me tell you why it's not awful.
Okay.
Okay. But I know a lot of people respond that way and I appreciate it because I know where
Yeah.
that sentiment comes from. So the day we're born and the day we die are 2 most important days in our life.
Yes, they
Extreme,
are.
like everything, our soul plans everything, and our souls communicate based on synchronicities, right?
Right.
So my mom and I had the synchronistic day. Of course, she gave birth to me, and then her death day is also my birthday. So we have more synchronicities showing me and my how important my soul is. Because at a soul level,
Right.
we know that there's never disconnection. Her body
Right.
passed away, but her soul will always be with me. So,
That's
but that's
beautiful.
the
That's
typical
beautiful.
response. And so I appreciate that response. That's a typical response. And no, that's how souls communicate. Okay, okay, okay. Because this is just one lifetime of infinite lifetimes.
Right. Right.
So that was the day that I knew I had to change. And that was the day I became the matriarch of my family. Now everyone's in my
Mhm.
heart. Now I'm in charge. And that's when I started to learn to surf the waves of life. And then 4 years
Right.
after that, my youngest daughter had developed an eating disorder and was at a residential facility. And I went for a therapy session and they blamed me for her eating disorder. And I tried to explain, well, look, we don't live in a vacuum. Yes, I have my challenges working through generational trauma that was passed down to me and then I passed down to my kids, and
Mhm.
we're working through that. But this isn't all my fault. So on the way home, I started
Right.
to internalize all of that negativity. And that's when I went home and I attempted suicide. My brain told
Oh my
me
God.
that my kids would be better off with a dead mother than a live one. And this was my
Wow.
soul's plan. So our souls, our souls plan our lives based upon, with the hills and valleys. Why? Because those hills and valleys help us dive into our emotional pain and then come out of our emotional pain. And that's how we help move through the energy, which is our
Right.
emotions. So our souls
Right.
express ourselves through our emotions, and that's how we go from those lower vibrating to the higher vibrating. And we need the lower vibrating to see ourselves here on earth. So when we're having a body, like our
Right.
souls split into masculine and feminine souls as mirrors, and then we incarnate in human bodies, and that's how we see ourselves and have opportunities for self-improvement. So our souls plan our lives based on the valley of darkness. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
much does that person need to take on to have an opportunity to expand? And
Mm-hmm.
then we learn how to come out of that valley of darkness and make that darkness conscious. Like, I understood enlightenment not because I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies and I've lived in Chinese Buddhist monasteries, because I
Mm-hmm.
experienced it myself, and then I had to explain it to my children who freaked out and thought I was mentally ill and like need to be locked up. I'm like, okay, I need to explain. So then my soul showed me a lot of Carl Jung and then all these physics
Right.
experiments and how our, like, it's Dr. David Hawkins who wrote Letting Go and Power versus Force, like really famous books. He's the one where I got the energy bodies and all the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a chart in an appendix in my book. So the Carl Jung
Mm-hmm.
quote is, one does not become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And a lot of people these days imagine that the slightly downhill track is what life should be. I mean, how many people, women, I want a man, but he needs to pay for my travel and pay for the cook and I just want to coast. We're not here to
Right.
coast. But why would some dream of coasting? Because they actually had this and they're in that valley of darkness and no one taught them how to get out. So this seems like a dream life.
Right.
That's the
Right.
communism, that's the Marxism, that's all that bullshit. This is not why
Right.
we're here as souls having a human experience. And because our souls are energy bodies, so they abide by the laws of physics, and we're here to expand our consciousness, which means download more wisdom into our souls. And that's what it is. When you have a wound, you learn to turn it into wisdom. Like, I had
Right.
a wound that I fear all men. But when I turned it into wisdom, men protect me. I went outside. I wasn't anxious. My
Right.
daughter noticed immediately. I was immediately a better woman and better mother. This is the
Right.
process we're here to go through. And that
Right.
process is gnarly. So,
You know, I
you
think
know, this is
I think
gnarly. I don't know. It's gnarly. I don't know what else to say.
I think the biggest thing about energy and ability to adapt is that you are meant to be here for something, and it's very easy
Mm-hmm.
to not take that outside look of how your body is actually functioning and operating, whether it's from a medical standpoint, whether it's from a
Mm.
spirituality standpoint, and you traveled the world to get these experiences. So you've seen
Yeah.
different places, different cultures, different religions, different beliefs, and it all obviously made you the person that you are. You know, I'm just a guy with a podcast, but I get to direct my energy and my
Mm.
resources to something that is cultivating and self satisfactory. And so
Yeah.
as a result, I get a chance to speak with people like yourself. I've talked to CEOs, I've talked to
Mm.
people from the military. I talked to a gentleman who, I've talked to UFO watchers, right? And even if I didn't
Wow.
know inherently the details of what it must be like to be a UFO watcher, right? You don't get dismissive of people. It's easy to say that person's crazy. How can you believe in that? And
Mm.
then you actually realize what they're following, what they've seen, what they believe. Everybody who sees something in the sky can't be seeing nothing. They have Air
Right.
Force pilots that are seeing stuff. They have Navy
Yeah.
pilots that are seeing stuff. And you're just like, whatever skepticism you may or may not have had starts to go out of the window when you start seeing people who are like, no, I saw this in the sky. And then you realize
Yeah.
that the world you live in is much bigger than just your respective area around
Yeah.
you. And
I mean,
it
the
becomes a
reason
beautiful
I
thing.
think the aliens aren't here. Oh, sorry. Oh, the
No, go
reason I
ahead.
think that we don't see aliens, like, why can't I have lunch with an alien? I've asked that question. I've had, Instagram posts. Why can't I? Because we're still don't understand ourselves and understand our emotions. We're still toddlers in a sandbox throwing the sand around as our emotions because we don't understand ourselves. The universe is a mirror, and we
Right,
have mirror neurons in our brains to teach us. So we're here to
right,
mirror our parents. So when our parents don't know how to process their own emotional pain, we mirror that. And that's where,
Right.
you develop children that are mentally ill. But that's all on purpose because we're creating bigger and bigger valleys of darkness for individual souls and the collective to go through, like, trans kids and everything we've been through with woke and, all the crazy, all the DEI. Everyone needs equal outcomes. We're not here for equal outcomes. Your soul's a different place than my soul. So if we create equal outcomes, there's no growth. So equal outcomes mean no one grows.
Right. Right.
That's the whole reason we're here. So it's like, that's how I know they're acting from a wound and they're not acting from wisdom. So, God, now I forgot where I was going with that.
No, you're good. No, this is, like I said, I always believe in being able to get on the show and find out and
Mm,
reach out with fascinated people because,
mm,
what you do in the book that you wrote, the people that you've helped, I think it's always great to get perspectives of different backgrounds and different beliefs and meanings. Where
mm.
can people find Kerry Blaser?
www.carryblaser.com. I'm on Instagram at Kerry Blaser. I have a YouTube channel, Kerry Blaser, and then I also have an Instagram, Red Pill Shaman.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I get fascinated just listening to you because I think that unlike a lot of people, you have a world perspective, right? You were like, hey, I was in Tibet, I was in Israel, I've been in California, I've been in Arizona, I've seen the world, I've experienced different things. And
Mm.
sometimes our perspectives are sometimes shaped only by the people that are around us in the same place we drive past every single day. So it's important to get a world perspective and view in order to reach your highest level of growth. So I really appreciate those insights that you've given.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
It's awesome. Kerry, I'm looking forward to a follow up conversation about some of the things we've talked about on here because I want to know
Yeah.
more about Tibet. I really do.
Yeah. Have me on anytime. Reach out.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for being on
Bye.
the T.R.O.N podcast. Bye.
Thank you.
That was fun.